Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Kimberly Guilfoyle Show, live on Rumble, where facts come first and where news is done right. And today, President Trump is seeing even more success on his efforts to restore law and order in our nation's capital. Since the new measures went into effect, violent crime is down 32%. Carjackings are down 86%. Homicides are down 60%. Robberies are down 47%. Assaults with dangerous weapons are down 18%. Property crime is down 16%. And there have been, listen to this, 0 murders. 0. Here's Vice President J.D. Vance with more. Watch.
What we have control over is the nation's capital. And if you look, for example, at the murder rate in D.C., it rivals some of the worst cities, the most violent cities anywhere in the world. That's a disgrace for our nation. That's a disgrace for the residents who live in D.C., who just want to take their kids to a park or walk down Union Station or take their family out for a bite to eat without being accosted by a vagrant or a violent criminal.
Crime has dropped
they
over
should have that right.
though, in the nation's capital.
Crime has dropped over 35% in the nation's capital in 10 days because of what Donald J. Trump has done.
So is that mission accomplished?
I think that there's so much more that we could do. Absolutely not. It's not mission accomplished. When you make such big progress in a matter of a week and a half, I think that you step on the gas and try to make D.C. even more safe. And here's the thing, Kristen, we don't have to live like this. My message to my fellow citizens here in D.C. or all across the country would be that allowing vagrants and armed robberies to take over your city, that's a policy choice. What President Trump is showing is that if you just empower local law enforcement to arrest and prosecute the bad guys, we can take back American streets. You, as a young family, whatever the color of your skin, you should not have to cross the street because there's a crazy person yelling at your children on the other side. You should not be worried that if you take your son out for a meal at 8 o'clock in the evening, an armed robber is going to assault your family. This is a policy choice to allow lawlessness to overrun our cities. The president has made a different policy choice. And I think what he's showing the entire American community is that we don't have to live like this. And that's the biggest thing that will come out of D.C. It matters a lot for D.C., but I think it matters more for the whole country to see that if we just make better choices, we can take back our cities.
And as the president explained, this is our nation's capital. Think about that. This should be one of the safest and most desired places to visit anywhere in the world. And it is time to end the D.C. decline. Take a look.
All of these things, 439 illegal alien criminals have been removed, and we have 6 known gang members, some of the worst leaders of gangs anywhere in the country, MS-13 and Tren de Aragua. We have 2 missing children that have been recovered. They thought they were gone. We brought them back to the family. The family started crying. They couldn't believe that they saw their child again. 49 homeless encampments have been removed. Like we have the head of South Korea coming in a little while, the president, and he drives down the street. Already, his people have told me, he said, what happened? It's so clean. We always came here, it was filthy dirty with homeless and papers all over the road. That's the other thing. Those roads are swept immaculate, but they're going to be much better in a few months when we put a topping on them. They're going to look like they're brand new. We'll get rid of those rusty old medians that have been crashed into 1,000 times, and they don't fix them. They just let them, they lay them down on the road and they sit there for months. But we don't do that. We don't run things. We run things like we run this. We like clean, we like beautiful, and we like safe.
And we love him. But Democrats, they don't want to be honest about that sort of crime, just like they don't want to be honest about what's going on with John Bolton. On Friday, FBI agents searched the Maryland home and Washington, D.C. office of former National Security Advisor John Bolton, surrounding allegations that he sent highly sensitive classified documents to his family from a private email server while working in the White House, and perhaps used classified information for his own personal gain. Watch.
Do with classified documents or about classified intelligence that Bolton printed in his book. Trump Justice Insider Mike Davis says Democrats, rhinos, and reporters who think this raid on John Bolton is about his book will be very embarrassed when the search warrant becomes public. Primetime's hearing Bolton was making a lot of money from overseas and may have been trafficking in intelligence. That wouldn't be putting America first. Constitutional scholar Jonathan Turley, who we just heard from, says Bolton could be looking at up to 20 years in prison. So Bolton should take his own advice and take a big, beautiful, deep breath.
I think it's important that everybody take a deep breath here. This is a very serious matter, and it would be better.
And the failing regime media apparently now has a problem with FBI raids, but they struck a very different tone when Mar-a-Lago got raided. And now they would be wise to actually face the facts. Look at this clip from Greg Gutfeld that has the left spinning in circles. Watch.
Retribution, I say, who cares? You know, don't lecture me on timing of lawfare. Don't lecture me on politically motivated, investigations. You guys invented this stuff. You loved doing it to Trump because you didn't think it through. You were so confident that Trump was toast, that you could rattle off free punch after free punch after free punch without any fear of reprisal. So yeah, is it retribution? I don't know. But when you think about the constant lawfare, the gerrymandering, the Dems never expect it to happen to them. They're like home invaders who didn't expect a well-armed occupant when they showed up. And Trump is well-armed. This is kind of an ongoing masterclass for the Republican Party, the new Republican Party. To quote Greasy Gav, how to fight fire with fire. The conservative movement, which I loved for the longest time, they were kind of happy to fritter away their influence and power on the notion that they were always above returning fire. Oh, I read for National Review. This is disgusting. Let's write a 4,000-word piece on judicial reform. And then they don't do anything. They go back and smoke their cigar. They always felt it was beneath them to get in the ring and hit back. So it's one of the presents that Trump gave the Republicans that they desperately needed were balls the size of Jupiter.
We love that. We love it. Telling it like it is. And joining me now, he's fabulous. Senior editor at The Daily Signal, author of the book Woke-Topus, Tyler O'Neill. Thanks for being back on the program.
Thanks again for having me.
All right. Well, this is, a lot of very interesting, fascinating news, developments going on. So we came to the right guy. The president is seeing results on making D.C. safe again. And I read off some of the stats earlier in the program, and there have been 0 murders, which is significant. I mean, lives saved, literally. You're in D.C. What are you personally seeing?
Yeah, I mean, the main thing is what I'm not seeing. I'm not seeing as many homeless people. I'm not seeing, there was an intersection that I would drive up to, and homeless men would be fighting each other, one of them shoving another one out in front of my car. So I had to jam on the brakes not to slam into him.
Oh my God.
This is the same intersection where my female colleagues were constantly being catcalled, and they almost feared to drive through this area of DC because they thought these guys would do something that they really shouldn't. Again, and this is, my best friend got robbed at gunpoint here in DC just a few years ago. So much of this is personal for me, and to see President Trump taking it seriously. And by the way, when you have people protesting Trump, putting these soldiers on the streets, and their protest, they're chanting Black Lives Matter. I'll tell you one thing, that 0 murders for the past week and a half, that is evidence of Black lives mattering. Most of the people who get killed in DC happen to be Black. And when you bring the crime rate down, that leads to more Black lives not being taken. So kudos to President Trump.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think all those who are protesting this need to think twice, especially if that's going to be their rhetoric.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And thank you for those important facts. More broadly, Tyler, what does it say after the failures in D.C. that have gone on and on again, like J.D. Vance said, policy choices for years and years. And now the president said he's ending cashless bail, which as a former prosecutor, I couldn't be more enthused about. And it seems, long past due.
Yeah, many of these policies, we talk about carjackings, and I think of when Greg Gutfeld talks about a certain part of the male anatomy, reminds me of the carjackings that have been happening in DC in recent years, really staggering numbers. We're talking about like
Terrible.
400 in a year. And when it happened to that Doge staffer, that really put an exclamation mark on it and said, no, this is not acceptable. We cannot have, and by the way, this was like a trend online where young people would be carjacking people and then posting about it on social media and like trying to outdo each other. I mean, it's just horrifying stuff. And the police would arrest someone, but then the prosecutor would refuse to press charges. And that happened both in the case of the Doge staffer. It also happened in the case of J. Michael Waller, who works for the Center for Security Policy. And these people got carjacked. The police were able to find suspects. And then the law, the prosecutors in DC would refuse to press charges here. And this is no ordinary, this is not a situation where you have a victimless crime here. This is a person being robbed at gunpoint of their car, their means of transportation, and then that car often being used to commit other violent crimes, which casts aspersions on the owner of the car, on the vehicle. So it compiles over and over. And to see these prosecutors not press charges, to see these people, we have to be firm against this sort of lawlessness. And thank God for President Trump coming in and putting an end to it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Now a Democrat consulting group called Third Way put out a memo listing words Democrats should stop using. The list includes words like privilege, systems of oppression, and pregnant people, among many others. What does this tell you?
Yeah, I mean, I think this tells me that some people on the left really do understand just how much of an albatross these woke policies are around the necks of the Democratic Party. But I have no confidence that they're going to actually listen to this memo. I mean, the people who are driving the Democratic Party right now, you have Gavin Newsom, who's at the forefront of pretty much everything. And then you have Mamdani, and you have many people out there who are just doubling down on woke. Even Abigail Spanberger here in Virginia, she's running for governor, and she's endorsed by the Human Rights Campaign. And she's not leading on LGBT issues, but she's not running away from them either. And this is happening in the midst of a big scandal in Loudoun County, where there were boys who were punished for the fault of acknowledging that there was a girl in the boys' restroom. And this girl was filming them, and then against the policy of Loudoun County, when that film gets brought out to the spotlight, the school goes after the boys who complained in the boys' locker room, not against the girl who filmed them in violation of Loudoun's policies. And so this is drawing an exclamation mark on these woke policies. And it's making Virginians look at the situation and say, I thought in 2021 some of these issues were addressed, and now they're rising up again to the surface. But this is all of a piece, because the modern Democratic Party is full bore on woke, and that's partially because all the activist groups that support them, the unions that fund them, the activist groups that set the agenda policy papers that send their staff into the Biden administration and into these Democratic policies, they are all lockstep on these issues, and they're not going to give them up. So Third Way can say until they're blue in the face, and by the way, I think Third Way is correct in this, that the Democrats need to move away from this woke orthodoxy, but that's not going to convince that party.
Yeah, you're right about that. And, as we've talked about before, the Democrats have a serious, real branding problem. And this is all, more evidence of it, right? But does their base even want to fix it? I know you said there's some that are clued in, that are getting it, but how about the base, Do they want to do something about it? Because they actually love these words and love these woke, ideas and policies.
I think the base will see this as a form of cancel culture against what a lot of them support. So yeah, I think there are some in the Democratic base who want competency and don't want woke things, but that part is growing, is diminishing piece by piece. And those people are the true moderates, and they're not staying in the Democratic Party. One of the reasons why the Democratic numbers are cratering is because the Democrats have hitched themselves to the woke wagon, and there's no getting off point anytime soon.
Yeah, that's the problem. And also, I just want to point out to our viewers, you had a column earlier this month about the so-called Biden burrowers. What did you find and the inspiration for that article? And how does it tie into the themes that you express and write about in your book?
Thank you. Yeah, so the Biden burrowers is a series of investigative reports that I did for the Daily Signal. These are people, so just zeroing out, zooming out for the 10,000 foot view. Presidents appoint, I believe it's roughly 200 people or so. It might be more than that, but it's in the hundreds. And then there are, or it might be, well, anyway, there are millions of people. No, there are thousands and thousands of people who work in the federal bureaucracy. Presidents can't appoint everybody who's in the bureaucracy, and we wouldn't want them to. That would be unworkable. But a lot of what happens is you get these political appointees who transition. They go from a political role to a supposedly non-political role. And what this means is they're burrowing into a bureaucratic role that's considered just focused on following orders, not focused on determining what policy actually should be. And the problem with this is a lot of these people are political activists who decide that they're going to transition to these career roles. And then when you get a new president, they stay in office, and then they can work to undermine the new president from within. So in this case, you have Biden political appointees who burrowed into the bureaucracy, who inside the bureaucracy, now they're in these non-political roles, but these are very political people. So just to name a few of them, one of them, Lucian Sikorsky, worked for Adam Schiff during Russiagate. And he's a lawyer, he's a former FBI analyst who is now in the FAA, and he can work from inside the FAA to oppose Trump. He likely will, because he was willing to work very closely with Adam Schiff on Russiagate. There's another woman who's now in the DOD, and she's a lawyer who advised Kamala Harris when Harris was going full bore against Brett Kavanaugh. And so she came on specifically to advise Harris on how to fight Kavanaugh's nomination. And now she's in the DOD under Trump. And not only that, but she also wrote an op-ed where she said that Trump is unfit to serve in public office, which means that she's working under him as commander-in-chief, where she's at the DOD. If anybody should not be working at the DOD as a lawyer there, it should be somebody who thinks the current commander-in-chief is unfit for office. But I mean, all of these people, I say again and again, their history raises a lot of questions. I don't know for certain that they're engaged in any activity right now against the president and his agenda, but I do know that their history raises a lot of red flags. Another one of them, Tina Thomas, worked very closely with Eric Holder, who weaponized the Department of Justice under Obama, pushing critical race theory and particularly pushing, this is an issue now in the news, redistricting along racial lines. And he has been trying to get pro-democratic redistricting throughout the country, and Tina Thomas worked directly with him. Now she is in the Justice Department under Trump. So why are these left-wing activists in the federal government? Again, it's possible maybe they are the actual true public servants who want to follow the president no matter who it is. I don't have concrete evidence that's not true, but I would highly doubt it if given their history.
Yeah, no doubt about that. You and I, we weren't born naive, okay? Meanwhile, but I love the way you phrase it. Let's talk about John Bolton, shall we? He's apparently under FBI investigation for mishandling classified documents. That is at least these initial reports. The media wants to feign outrage, but there appears to be some serious misconduct that's been alleged. they are the ones always shouting that no one is above the law, but here now it's a double standard.
Well, yeah, the shoe is on the other foot. If there really is egregious abuse of these classified documents, I think it would be good to hear about it. I think we need to have one standard of justice that is applied evenly. So whether we're talking about, a former president like Joseph Biden, or we're talking about John Bolton, I think we need to have a standard of justice that makes sense. I mean, it still stands out to me that they decided not to prosecute. Biden was considered not worthy, not mentally cognizant enough to be prosecuted for these classified documents, but mentally competent to be ruler of the free world, commander-in-chief, leader of our entire country. So, how that balances out, I'm not quite sure. When it comes to John Bolton, I want due process for everyone who is facing charges like this. But if he did abuse his authority here, everybody said when Trump got raided at Mar-a-Lago that no one should be above the law.
Remember that?
And now suddenly they're acting as though it's the end of the world when John Bolton is raided. Let's have one standard of justice.
I'm for that all the way. And how does this all, tie into your fabulous book and, the swamps-like apparatus that you have so diligently uncovered?
Thank you. Yeah, so my book, The Woktopus, The Dark Money Cabal Manipulating the Federal Government, outlines how the left's dark money network, people like George and Alex Soros, the Arabella Advisors Network, Hans-Jörg Wyss, these people funnel a lot of cash to the woke NGOs that called the shots in the Biden administration. We all know President Biden wasn't making every decision. He wasn't even making every decision on who to pardon. So, when it comes to who is advising him, who is in his ears, where did they come from? What does that reveal? A lot of this is in The Woktopus. And so I explain how the Human Rights Campaign, the Center for American Progress, the Southern Poverty Law Center, the ACLU in particular, were funneling their staff and ideas into the Biden administration, pushing it in a woke direction and pushing the bureaucracy. I mean, this isn't just the fact that Biden, who was elected, well, we can question how the 2020 election happened, but Biden, who at least was the president, he has the ability to name his people for these offices. But there also is this vast fourth branch of government, the administrative state, that the left very effectively used to push their agenda. And they've been doing it for decades, but they were really successful under Biden because Biden was such a figurehead. And so my book delves into that and explains why we're seeing a lot of the pushback, both from inside the administrative state and from outside, with a lot of these woke activist groups like the ACLU filing lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit, hoping that judges will block Trump's actions so that they can claim victory and so they can tie his hands until they can get somebody else they like in the White House.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That's the game plan. And let's talk a little bit about back to school. Now that all the kids are heading back, where do you think we're at in taking sort of this far left lunacy out of the classroom, especially in places like Loudoun that you reference in Fairfax County, Virginia?
Yeah, I think we're a lot further than we were in 2020 and 2021, but there is a long more way to go. So what we're seeing with the schools, these are downstream. We say politics is downstream of culture. Our K-12 schools are downstream of the education establishment. So one of the main things that President Trump is doing that's really important, he's taking the cultural fight to the left in institutions that matter culturally. So you see the Smithsonian, you see him coming in and saying that you can't discriminate on the basis of race and that you can't engage in critical race theory, DEI, these things that were essentially gospel for much of the cultural elites, the cultural apparatus in America up until this point. So Trump is taking the fight to the elites, and that's the thing that's going to have long-term effects going forward. And it's great to see, I was listening to Al Mohler this morning,
Yeah.
and he was talking about how every museum makes an argument, is actually not just showing artifacts, but telling a story about our past. And the left has been weaponizing these institutions to tell its stories. Now President Trump is rooting that out of these institutions, and that's a really powerful step forward.
It really is. Sometimes though, Tyler, what I worry about, I mean, we're making so many things happen, tremendous accomplishments at a record pace. I just actually worry because you see the difference in the policy choices, deliberate policy choices, and how very severely it effectuates outcomes in cities and public safety and crime and all of the above. Like, what happens then after Trump? Like, this is the problem. I already am starting to worry, okay, about midterm elections and, 3 years from now. Like, this is like, comfort me.
We don't know. I mean, so there are a lot of factors looking forward here. Trump is moving the Overton window, and that's really important. But ultimately, the Overton window has been moved so far to the left that Trump is bringing it back a little bit to the center, but we still need more. And the main thing, I can say this till I'm blue in the face, like under Biden and under previous administrations, not only did the woke-topus have an impact in the federal government, but it was also making money from the federal government, getting our tax dollars. And President Trump is doing yeoman's work, and Congress has made great strides in cutting off a lot of that funding, but some of it is still there. You still have the public sector unions in the federal government that need to be addressed. And I hope there's another reconciliation bill that addresses that. But Trump is setting an agenda, but it's not an agenda that is going to be over by the end of these 4 years. And I think we all know that. We all basically grasp, Trump is changing the rules of the game, but it has to continue. It's not enough. And, I have tremendous appreciation for what he's achieved so far, but he's laying the groundwork for a movement that continues. He's not making a one and done change, especially on a lot of these issues that carry a lot of cultural sway moving forward. So we have to stay vigilant. And I think, if you want hope, just look at those numbers of how the Democratic Party is viewed among Americans right now and see where they're going. They're having a real crisis of conscience and authority. They don't know which way is forward. They want to oppose Trump like he's Hitler, but I think everybody realizes now that Trump is nothing like Hitler, and that rhetoric is not going to succeed for them. So they're trying to find every way that they can define Trump as evil, when in reality Americans are very tired of that narrative. So I don't have confidence that the Democrats won't find another narrative going forward. But I do know that right now, woke is an albatross around their neck. They don't have positive alternatives to Trump's policies. Trump is rightly in the driver's seat, and we'll see where things go. I want to see the country more rally around Trump. And as we get more positive results of his policies, hopefully we'll see more and more of that.
Okay, that's a great answer to a difficult question. And I have another one because, as a mom and kids going back to school, what are your tips for parents, for students? How should they navigate these issues when they're actually confronted with it?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So I'm just going to lay my cards on the table. I'm a Christian who's very concerned about this. I think it's very important that Christians show both love for our opponents and for those who are, who really are our enemies, and a stance on truth that is unyielding. And so we have to say, no, LGBT ideology is not good. It should not be taught to kids. We need to get porn out of schools. We need to get these divisive racial messages out of schools. We need to not demonize the history of our country, and we need to acknowledge the positive things of our country. But at the same time, we need to do so in a winsome way that doesn't, that doesn't constantly put down and go against everyone. So I think the main thing that we have to do is set forth the truth in as strong a way as possible, and with compassion. So when you face these issues, and it's a really hard minefield to navigate right now. My family, we've decided we're blessed enough to be able to send our kids to a private Christian school, and we encourage those who don't want to fight this battle in their own families to find alternatives. I very much support as much school choice as possible to get kids out of failing school systems.
So does President Trump.
And into situations where their values, the school's values, align with their values. I think it is an absolute travesty that we cannot trust the public schools to be neutral. If there are going to be public schools, they need to not be forcing this woke ideology. And that's what they're doing. And so we need to have as many alternatives as possible. But for those moms and dads who still have kids in the public school system, I pray for you, I respect you, I honor you. I hope that you're able to use your voices to send a wake-up call. And not every school district is as liberal as the one that I'm in right now. Not every school district has gone woke. And there are many that do a good job of aligning with the values of the parents. But I tell you, in Virginia, we see example after example after example, even in red areas of the state where you would not expect this. Suddenly there's a transgender bathroom, or there's a policy that prevents parents from knowing what their kids are identifying as at school. And this sort of thing should not be happening under the new rightful definitions of Title IX in the federal government. I think President Trump is doing a great job. The Department of Education is calling these Northern Virginia school districts to task, which hopefully will change the way things are looking going forward. But right now, it is a battle, and I pray for our nation. I pray for the school districts. I pray that we don't have to be at loggerheads with one another, because this is fundamentally a clash of worldviews, and it does not belong in the public school system.
You're absolutely right. It does not belong there. Do not wage battle in our children's classrooms. How dare you? Congress gets back to work after Labor Day. There is expected to be some battles over the defense spending bill, a recessions package, and much more. What are you keeping your eye on, Tyler?
Yeah, I'm keeping my eye on a lot. I think those are major battles that are coming sooner rather than later in Congress. We're also looking at a funding deadline, a discussion about how the federal government, and this is part of the military spending bill that you mentioned. It's all part of keeping the government open and managing. So Trump is in the driver's seat, but even the Republican Party, the majority in Congress is very thin. And so you have to make, there are a lot of Republicans who don't have the spine that Trump has. And so ultimately, we have to keep the government funded. And there's going to be a close battle. Democrats are willing to shut down the government in this. And I think it's important. We'll be covering at the Daily Signal. If Democrats are the ones to blame, we will call them out for the government shutdown if it happens. But I think, I covered a situation where a Republican defense spending bill is sending money again to some of these woke parts of the federal government that were used to fund leftist causes and push things that are like censoring Americans. And this kind of thing has to be called out. We'll be paying attention to it at the Daily Signal. These fights are not going away. And, we're talking another round of rescissions. I'm looking forward to that. I hope it's going to be even more robust than this previous round was. Defunding PBS and NPR is a huge step in the right direction, and I'd like to see more of that. We also have hopefully another round of reconciliation next year where hopefully we can address many of the issues that were left on the cutting room floor with the One Big Beautiful Bill. It had a lot of really great victories in it, but it wasn't as strong as everyone wanted it to be. So we're going to see a lot out of this Congress. I think a lot of people are looking ahead to the midterm elections, but it would be a mistake not to pay attention to what's happening in Congress right now.
No, you're right about that. Listen, we like to talk about all of it, Tyler, because we have you and we love the Daily Signal. Take it away. Tell everybody where they can find you, get all the latest, biggest breaking news, investigative journalism from the Daily Signal, buy your book, follow you, all of the above.
Thanks so much, Kimberly. So you can find the Woktopus, the dark money cabal manipulating the federal government, across the internet, pretty much wherever you buy books.
Everywhere.
It's on Amazon. It's on other platforms. It's in Barnes & Noble. And you can find it in multiple versions. We have an audiobook, hardcover, paperback, and an ebook. So I highly encourage you to take a look at that. Take a look at and follow me on X. My handle is Tyler2, the number 2 O'Neill. I just broke a really big story about a Moms for Liberty leader who is kicked out of the Girl Scouts. This story has really blown up. She wasn't just kicked out of the Girl Scouts for saying she wouldn't support Pride, but she also faced swatting. So she had a false call to her house with police because she dared to criticize a church with an LGBTQ flag out front. So this kind of thing, I'm constantly paying attention to the news and finding the next big stories. You can follow the Daily Signal on all platforms. We're on Instagram, YouTube, I believe we also all here on Rumble, on X, on many platforms, Facebook, of course, included. And the one place we're not is TikTok, but we're everywhere else. And we're coming at you with the intelligence you need to know not just what's happening in DC, but what it means and what to look forward to next.
Well, Tyler, you're fabulous. Thank you for taking the time for us on this important news day. Congratulations on all your success and the great work that you do as a writer. You're A+, superb. Tyler O'Neill, thank you so much.
Thank you so much again.
All right, be well. Okay, so Tyler's amazing. We love having him on the show. But first, be sure to check out the 1775 Coffee Company. We talk about it all the time. Don't compromise on taste, quality, or your values. And 1775 coffee is brewed to perfection, crafted with precision, and built on patriotism. The farm to cup process means there is quality, authenticity, and sustainability from start to finish. All the beans are ethically and exclusively single sourced. So why don't you? What are you waiting for? Go ahead. Try 1775 coffee today. Go to 1775coffee.com/KG for 15% off your first order. You're going to thank me. And in closing, President Trump is doing what other leaders have abandoned for decades, reducing crime, increasing security, and making D.C. safe again. All it took was some courage, some confidence, and total competence. And like I said, it is a new day in Washington, D.C. in more ways than one. And we are still in the early stages of seeing some big, big results. And I want to thank you so much for joining us today, spending time with me today. Please be sure to download the Rumble app, subscribe to my channel, turn on notifications, like and share, and tell all your friends so they know exactly where to find us. And please also be sure to follow me across all platforms, X, Truth Social, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Don't miss Don Jr.'s Big Show at 6 p.m. Eastern tonight right here on Rumble. Stay tuned to Rumble for all the very latest breaking news coverage. I hope you have a great rest of the day, and I'm looking forward to talking to you again very soon. God bless.